Part 1. Rose Noble deserved better. Man, what a breath of fresh air the Star Beast was after a mind-crushingly boring Chibnall era. I faithfully watched every single Jodie episode of Doctor Who, and I could not tell you a single thing that happened in any one of them. But that classic RTD era energy is back, baby, and it doesn't even lean too super heavily on the nostalgia factor. There's fresh new stuff that nonetheless preserves what we liked. The Doctor feels like a real person, motivated by concrete and compelling desires. The domestic family scenes are packed with charm and verisimilitude. The aliens are campy as hell, their diabolical schemes in equal parts ridiculous and unworkable. It's great! I couldn't be more chuffed! And perhaps most importantly, David Tennant sells it. He's only matured as an actor, and now that he's solidly middle-aged, he actually kinda has some of that gravelly, Capaldi-esque gravitas that the Doctor needs, while preserving both Ten's youthful nerd chic charm and his striking tragic pathos. Catherine Tate is brilliant as always, and of course I punched the air when Donna said she'd burn down the world to protect Rose. So keep all that positive stuff in mind as I express the following. The most frustrating thing about this episode for me was that, very ironically, considering the predictably inane discourse that has surrounded it, the Star Beast wasn't nearly woke enough. I think Rose kinda got short shrift here. Look, if there's one thing we Whovians know, it's that RTD's biggest weakness as a writer is cheese. Specifically, excessive and unearned cheese right at the end of a story. Remember that time that Martha turned the Doctor into floaty blue Jesus using nothing but the power of Whoevangelism? Remember that time that the end of time stretched until the end of time, just so the Doctor could say goodbye to literally everyone he'd ever met? And at the end here, we get a similar moment. Having long since established the human Time Lord metacrisis as a big fucking deal, capable of burning up a human mind in mere minutes if allowed to be remembered, what is Uncle Rusty's solution? Simple. You, let it go.
Just let it go. And we choose to let it go.
Except instead of making an ice castle, you can just slough off all that pesky Time Lord energy through a quick vagina monologue and just a dash of I am woman, hear me roar. For all of the episode's talk about the fluidity of gender, it's a wild bit of world building that feels weirdly gender essentialist. Donna and Rose all but turn to the camera and say if Jodie were here, she would get it, but David's back and no man would ever willingly abdicate power, even though that's the Doctor's favorite goddamn pastime. Men, right? Or, I'm sorry, male-presenting Time Lords, right? And, like, look, it's not the cheesiest narrative turn or the most cringe liberal moment in an RTD episode by a long shot. And the whole Rose figures out how to manage the metacrisis thing would be infinitely more forgivable if, frankly, Rose had been given some more interesting characterization. But she sure as hell wasn't. What do we know about Rose? Well, we know that she's trans. That's cool. I could have done without the bully bike boys loudly shouting her dead name at her, but whatever, that's certainly a real thing that happens, and the following very touching scenes with Donna and Sylvia more than make up for it. What else? She makes stuffed animals and hangs out in a shed. Okay, that's pretty cool too. Oh, sorry, what's that? She only makes stuffed animals because she's remembering old Doctor Who monsters? The shed is just a makeshift TARDIS, and neither of those things are visually foreshadowed very much at all before the big reveal? Okay. There's some interesting stuff with her feelings of isolation and her resultant empathy for the Meep situation, but these aren't given much room to breathe before the big chase scene, after which the Meep quickly turns evil, after which Donna and the Doctor promptly wrest the episode away from Rose and refuse to give it back. And then guess what? The most important moment of Rose's entire goddamn life takes place off-screen. Cowering amongst rubble in an abandoned warehouse, Rose's mind is suddenly flooded with memories, but not her memories, no. Memories she has never lived. Her own mother's memories from before she was born. A trillion fantastical images, enough terrifying creatures and breathtaking cosmic beauty to burn a human brain to dust. But for some reason, It all sits quite comfortably in Rose's head. Thoughts and feelings she's felt her entire life, formerly elusive and peripheral, forever just out of reach of her conscious mind, all at once they click into place, and she is filled with clarity and purpose. And then, she disarms a bomb or whatever, but what does that do to a person? How the hell does Rose feel about that? She thought she chose her name because she liked it. Perhaps she enjoyed the metaphor of a beautiful flower that nonetheless bears sharp thorns. But to discover that it was merely a subconscious echo? That she named herself after her mom's friend's old flame? A girl barely older than herself who was whisked away to outer space by the same stranger who showed up at Rose's doorstep just this evening, death and destruction in his wake. And what of the Meep's place in all this? This sickeningly adorable turncoat who took advantage of her good heart? What of the thoughts of vengeance that now fill her head when she looks at the Meep's detestable, wide-eyed face, this newly awakened partial consciousness that once drained the entire Thames just to watch the Rachnos drown? And then she's not even allowed to go into the fucking TARDIS at the end? What the actual fuck, Mom? The most transphobic thing to ever happen. Rose arguably knows the Doctor just as intimately as Donna does now. So how come Donna gets to go inside and spill fucking coffee on everything and Rose doesn't? How the hell is that fair? I don't know. I feel like in order to hang the climax of your story on the concept of queer joy winning the day, you have to go beyond the simplistic positivity of mere inclusion. Queer joy is about agency and authenticity, and Rose utterly lacks any sort of agency in the narrative, which in turn robs her of any feelings of authenticity. Don't get me wrong, I loved all the stuff with Donna and the Doctor, and it was not a mistake to focus on it by any stretch. But as for Rose, I needed either a lot more of her or a lot less of her. And seeing as less of her is what the bigots want, I'm inclined to argue that we needed a lot more. Part 2. So what was the significance of the song again? Before moving forward, I want to clarify, I like all of these specials. They're very good. At times, writing this video has felt like an exercise in spoiled entitlement, as if I'm lamenting the disappointing flavor profile of my McDonald's Happy Meal after eating nothing but gravel for the past 5 years. That being said, Wild Blue Yonder is by far the best 14th Doctor outing, and I'm gonna go ahead and let my good pal Russell explain why.
You have to take a great deep breath with this episode and trust it. Now, I remember sitting writing it thinking, should we find a cellar full of robot killers? Should we discover a vault on the spaceship that's got William Hartnell inside it? Genuinely, I thought, the 60th, I thought, should we do this, should we do that? And I had to have words myself. I had to sit there going, just stay true to the idea. You said to yourself, it's just the two of them on board a spaceship with their doubles. Stick to that.
Why, yes, Russell, it is always better to laser focus your Doctor Who episode on a single compelling premise instead of trying to cram in 2 or 3 compelling premises, thereby depriving yourself of the runtime needed to explore any of them effectively. You're writing these, right? You could have done that with the other 2. Look, I'm not saying you're as bad as Chibnall by a long shot, but let me briefly recreate my typical experience watching one of his episodes.
Chris, I really just need you to focus, okay? Can you do that for me? Can you focus for a second? Can you just focus, Chris? Chris, buddy, I need you to just focus up for a second. Chris, I need you to focus. All right, Chris, I need you to focus. Focus, Chris, I need you to focus. Focus, Chris!
When you get so excited about different fun premises that you just dump everything in there like it's a Hungarian goulash, well, that way Chibnall lies, Russell, and I just don't want to see you do that to yourself. You're not doing it yet, but I see the warning signs, and I want you to let me know if you start to feel those urges, okay? I'm your dad. I'm here to help. All right, I'm gonna reel it in because this is getting snarky to the point of condescension. Wild Blue Yonder is really good, you guys. guys, a creepy, scary little episode worthy of Stephen Moffat on his best day, or Neil Gaiman on his worst. David Tennant and Catherine Tate absolutely murder their performances as both a doctor and Donna who are struggling to understand each other after such a long time apart, and as a pair of terrifying, eldritch, shape-shifting monsters from beyond the edge of the universe. The simplicity of this episode is what really sells it. Deprived of both the TARDIS and his sonic screwdriver, the Doctor is forced back to the basics of what makes him an interesting character, namely his analytical brain and puzzle-solving skills. But also, the nature of these evil doppelgangers, the fact that they have access to all of your thoughts but still don't grasp all the intricacies of physical existence, drives the Doctor and Donna to frantically focus on their relationship. The classic sci-fi trope of the "how can I tell you're really you" game is made all the more fraught by the many years these two have spent apart, how desperately they both want to reacquaint themselves with each other, but how difficult that is to do, given the trauma the Doctor has suffered in the interim, as well as Donna's reluctance to dive back into the adventuresome lifestyle. These two driving forces, combined with the incredibly effective campy horror elements, give this episode some serious emotional welly all around. But sadly, Wild Blue Yonder doesn't quite stick the landing. Basically, this episode has a bit of a Raiders of the Lost Ark problem, or, if you want to go closer to home, a Planet of the Ood problem. If Indiana Jones never shows up in the movie at all, what happens? Well, the Nazis go on their big search for the Ark, they find it and crack it open, the Ark melts their goddamn faces off, they're defeated, and the day is saved. If the Doctor and Donna never show up on the Ood sphere, what changes about those events? Well, nothing. Mr. Baldy gets oodified, Ood Sigma shuts off the mind control lightning around the hive brain just fine without the Doctor's help, and the slave revolt goes off without a hitch. Fuck out of here, colonizers! If the TARDIS never crashes on this abandoned spaceship floating at the edge of the universe, what happens? Well, Jimbo keeps walking down the corridor as the ship slowly reconfigures itself, and eventually he presses the button. The ship detonates, instantly killing the not things, who haven't been provided with any minds to read or physical forms to copy, thereby depriving them of the opportunity to gain enough intelligence to figure out the dead captain's plan. Victory! Huzzah! The mystery elements of this episode, the first two acts where our heroes get to flex their detective skills and figure out what's happening, are incredibly strong. But once they figure out the mystery, the question becomes, oh no, the captain had a good plan for defeating these things, and we fucked it up by accident. How do we fix that mistake, and how do we get out of here? And those aren't bad narrative questions per se, but the answer to the former is just that we need to speed up the countdown, which is done in a matter of seconds, and followed by a chase scene that I think we're supposed to believe is linked to the countdown, but ends up having no bearing on it. And the answer to the latter is, the TARDIS magically knows that the episode's about to end, so it comes screaming back just in the nick of time. Our heroes didn't summon it, or find it, or take any action whatsoever to get it back, it's just there. But even this disappointing turn is followed by an intriguing beat in the scene. The Doctor gets in the TARDIS, but both Donna and her Donnelganger reach him at the same time. Since they're in a hurry, he has to ask one question to know if it's really her. And guess what? He gets it wrong. For the second time in the episode, he nearly dooms himself and the entire universe by failing to identify the real Donna. But importantly, it's the first time Donna knows about it, and we can see the horror and betrayal on her face as she's left behind, turning to see the explosion advancing towards her down the corridor. All her fears of never seeing her family again confirmed. All the qualms and hesitations she had about adventuring with the Doctor justified in the worst way possible. Luckily, the Doctor realizes his mistake at the last second by, noticing that fake Donna's wrist is a millimeter too long, which is lame and a cheat, but whatever. More infuriating to me is that Donna isn't even mad at him, and seemingly, he doesn't even get mad at himself, even though that's his second favorite pastime. That's twice that he failed to recognize his best friend in the universe. Are we just not gonna spend any time on the emotional fallout from that? What the hell is going on? Look, I love Bernard Cribbins just as much as anybody, and of course, I'm saddened that they couldn't film the rest of his scenes before he died. But I can't believe I'm the only one who thinks they should have released this bit on YouTube as a deleted scene and simply changed the dialogue in The Starbeast and The Giggle to pay tribute to Wilf as a character, letting the characters sit in their grief for a second instead of just pretending he's alive off screen somewhere from now until the end of time. And hey, maybe that might give us some runtime at the end of Wild Blue Yonder to sit in the ramifications of the story's resolution rather than swiftly move on to the next thing. Oh, yeah, and I still have no idea what the significance of the titular song was supposed to be. I guess the episode's setting could be described as a wild yonder, although it's more black than blue. And I guess that somewhat like the song's jaunty melody obscures its warlike lyrics, the Doctor's goofball demeanor obscures his traumatized interior. But that doesn't really feel like a new observation, and honestly, it's a more fitting metaphor for the show itself, especially how these specials in particular really like to pat themselves on the back for their diversity and representation, while steadfastly refusing to examine some of Doctor Who's more unpleasant imperialist undertones. You remember that TV reporter in The Starbeast who got shoved into the back of a van by UNIT as a cutaway gag? Because military violence towards members of the press is just a hoot and a half, I guess? Whatever happened to that guy? Is he, alive? Part 3. His story would have ended much differently if he had a sassy gay friend. Ncuti Gatwa as an actor is a revelation. His performance as Eric in Sex Education is my favorite on that show, and perhaps in all of television history. That charm, that potent mix of invigorating confidence and paralyzing doubt that all queer folks can relate to, it's a remarkably striking performance, and when he was announced as the newest Doctor, I was, well, beyond chuffed. So why did I find him so underwhelming in The Giggle? Well, I guess it all has to do with the bi-generation. On first viewing, I really liked it. It was satisfyingly bizarre, and I truly did not see it coming. Yeah, it is kinda lame that defeating the Toymaker, an elemental being of seemingly infinite power, comes down to beating him in a game of catch? Okay. God, if only my outer space daddy would play catch with me and then compress me into a suitcase. It's a weirdly dumb resolution that speaks to Uncle Rusty's consistent denouement problem that we discussed in the previous section. And also, it is very weird that the 14th Doctor emerges from the mitosis with, like, the clothes part of his outfit, and 15 just kind of gets the shirt, the tie, and the underwear, aka the strippery parts of the outfit. And, like, sure, it's all just supposed to be delightful nonsense. But then nobody points it out. We didn't even get a pond put your trousers on moment. That, combined with all the shots of his ass and bare legs as he flips around, it's either an utterly meaningless yet wild decision born from nothing more than pure chaos and Russell T. Daviesian whimsy, or it's a bit of a gross, leering, thank God we have a bona fide snack in the TARDIS again moment, akin to all those times when Stephen Moffat was clearly writing with only one hand on the keyboard, except gay this time. And like, I'm not ungrateful for that, necessarily. I am a living, breathing human with hot red blood coursing through my veins. I have a soul, and a consciousness, and a love of all that is pure and good and true in this world. Of course I enjoy looking at Ncuti Gatwa. He's a goddamn beautiful man. I'm getting off track. Okay, so the central mystery of these 3 episodes above all is, why did the Doctor get this face back? Why did she regenerate into this skinny old motherfucker after more than 1,000 years of her personal timeline spent away from this particular body, this particular life? And here, Donna provides us with a possible answer. It's because the Doctor knew that he couldn't keep running. They've known for a long time that their modus operandi is to run from their problems rather than truly solving them.
Oh, the ones that ran away, I never stopped.
And I'll do what I always do. I'll get in my box and I'll run and I'll run. In case all the pain ever catches up, in every place I go, it will be there.
The 10th Doctor's last words were, "I don't want to go." I made fun of the last bit of the end of time before, but I think there is a reading to be had of that sequence that fits into the 10th Doctor's arc. Namely, he loves all these people, but that love is fundamentally incompatible with the way he lives his life. The danger and thrill he constantly seeks out is unsustainable for us mere humans. It traps Rose in an alternate dimension, it deeply traumatizes Martha's entire family, and it threatens to burn up Donna's entire brain. The only way to protect her is to make her forget it ever happened. In many ways, the human Time Lord metacrisis is the most intimate thing the Doctor's ever done. He is able to share his entire brain and all his memories with her. The Dr. Donna understands him more than anyone ever has, and she cannot handle it. There's a sci-fi timey-wimey reason for this in-universe, but textually, Rose, Martha, and Donna all have to stop traveling with the Doctor for the same reason. With Donna, it's just more stark, more severe for having been more intimate. The 10th Doctor was perhaps the most emotionally open Doctor we've gotten up to that point. Admittedly, I haven't seen a great deal of the classic series, but from what I have seen, the classic Doctors tend to be a bit stodgier, a bit older and grumpier. The 9th Doctor was a bundle of rage and Time War trauma, but meeting Rose changed his life. He wanted more than anything to continue being with her, and so who better to change into than a young, svelte, foxy Doctor?
And a little bit foxy.
A veritable Time Lord Casanova, a handsome, dashing adventurer to replace the irascible patriarchs of old. But the trick worked too well. This Doctor is a little bit too much of a lover. His heart's a little too open. He can't bear to let go, to move on. He accidentally creates a weird fucked up clone of himself just because he can't bear to regenerate into someone else. And when he finally does regenerate, it's because he can't bear to let Wilf die. Even as Wilf begs him not to save him, that he's an old man who's had his time, who's made his peace with death. He saves Wilf, but not before screaming at the sky like a wounded child throwing a tantrum.
But me? I could do so much more! So much more! But this is what I get. My reward. But it's not that!
And before he goes, he visits everyone, but he can't get too close. He says goodbye wordlessly, from afar. He can't bear to stay, but he doesn't want to go either. So what does the Doctor do next? Well, how about doubling down on all of his problems? Let's make his next regeneration even younger, even sexier, even more reckless. Let him inspire even more unhinged and self-destructive behavior in his companions. And when that blows up in his face too, let's get all old and grumpy and closed off and allergic to vulnerability again. Oh, whoops, that didn't work either. Woman time. Woman time. Woman time, woman time. A really badly written woman with no discernible personality. I'll be honest, Jodie Doctor doesn't really fit into this analysis because I still have no clue what her whole deal was supposed to be. Point is, in the same way that the Doctor subconsciously chose his 12th face to remind him of his duty to the world, he chose his 14th face because he knew deep down that he couldn't keep running. That his trauma could always run faster and farther and would never leave him alone if he didn't finally just stop for a second and do something about it. And so when I first watched the episode, I was very happy for him. I liked that the 14th Doctor got to keep his unspoken promise to the 10th, that he didn't have to go this time. That it's okay to take some time to breathe, to chill on Earth for a second, to feel your feelings, to appreciate your friends and found family. But also, nobody wants to watch David Tennant just chilling on Earth for a bunch of years doing absolutely nothing. What is this, Good Omens? No, it's Doctor Frickin' Who. Out of universe, we need the Doctor to sustain his unsustainable lifestyle indefinitely, or else we don't have a show or an IP or a brand anymore. So in order to give the Doctor this happy ending, we essentially have to clone the Doctor. And then while one Doctor chills on Earth with his former companion and her family, the other Doctor goes back to the TARDIS to have cool adventures, which, fuck, that's just Journey's End again.
Wow! If I had a nickel for every time I was
David Tennant cloned,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
And hey, it was weird then, and it's weird now. How many David Tennant clones are we gonna end up with by the time we're done here? If the answer is any less than 20, I'm burning down the BBC. Point is, in order to make the 15th Doctor's continued non-stop adventures palatable, after 3 specials in a row about the many psychological issues caused by a life of non-stop adventures, we have no choice but to construct a mental health king.
I'm fine. I'm fine because you fix yourself. We're Time Lords. We're doing rehab out of order.
Now, the problem with this isn't all the logistical, science-y, YNC stuff the fart noise fanboys will get up in arms about. Delightful nonsense is the water in which Doctor Who swims. No. The problem is that this turn of events is utterly devoid of, for lack of a better word, relatability. Look, if there were such a thing as out-of-order rehab, that would be great. I would love to be able to split myself evenly in 2, dump all of my issues and trauma and neuroses into my clone, send the clone to therapy to let him figure all that shit out, tell him to call me when he's done, and then stride confidently into the wide world to enjoy my life. But I can't do that. In fact, I would argue that the fundamental premise of the entire human goddamn condition is that I can't do that. Therefore, watching someone do exactly that feels weird. It feels unobserved, fake, removed from emotional reality. Because this new Doctor immediately demonstrates himself to be unburdened, unencumbered, healthy, helpful, and wise, it almost feels like the Doctor just farted out a sassy gay friend for himself. A perfectly selfless therapist with nothing better to do than let you cry on his shoulder and tell you how to solve your problems while never experiencing any of his own. Now, admittedly, this is from like 20 minutes of screen time, so who knows what is to come. I don't hate the idea of an emotionally healthy Doctor, but I hope that in the upcoming season, Ncuti Gatwa, Russell T Davies, and the rest of Doctor Who's creative team are able to preserve a Doctor who is, at the very least, a little bit of a hot mess. Part 4, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And hey, I don't know what the hell I was worried about. The first mustachioed Doctor absolutely hit it out of the park. Ncuti Gatwa's performance in the church on Ruby Road is simply scrumptious. I believe him utterly at every moment he is on screen, whether he is crying silently in the snow or dishing out delightfully gay one-liners. All of his mannerisms strike this pitch-perfect, difficult-to-describe balance between seeming totally like the Doctor we know and love, and also totally like Ncuti Gatwa, if that makes sense. He has all the sass of the 9th Doctor, the earnest social curiosity of the 10th, the acrobatic oddball swagger of the 11th, and the passionate fiery pathos of the 12th. But also, this man is gay! The Doctor has always had a bit of genderqueer energy, seriously, look at the 6th Doctor, the man is literally a fucking rainbow. But Ncuti and the costume designers have dialed the sparkle up to 15, and I couldn't be more chuffed. Every look, iconic. The leather jacket and boob sweater combo, ooh baby. The kilt in the nightclub, serving absolute cunt on a silver fucking platter. As for the rest of the episode, it's fine. Goblins as a concept are inherently fraught because one wrong move and everything gets real anti-Semitic real quick. Whether your goblins go so far as to control the banks or simply kidnap and eat babies, it's simply not a great look from any direction. And the fact that we never get a real explanation of where the goblins come from doesn't help. I get that we're going for a more fanciful fairy tale tone, and that the 14th Doctor's thing with the salt has blurred the lines between superstition and reality in this universe, but like, I don't know. In my opinion, puzzles and mysteries and problem solving are a huge part of Doctor Who's appeal. And when you just kind of go, goblins, don't think about it, it diminishes your Dr. Hook a little bit. As for Ruby, I like her. She's pretty cool. I'm invested in her arc. I love her family too. My problem with Ruby has very little to do with the way she's written, and definitely nothing to do with Millie Gibson's effortlessly charming performance. The problem with Ruby is a problem with Doctor Who. Because look, let me briefly recreate my viewing experience of the moment when Ruby, at the end of the episode, finally enters the TARDIS.
There you go. Classic.
At this moment, Ruby is experiencing the TARDIS for the first time. But we're not. We've seen countless companions do this exact same thing. The bursting into the doors, staring at the impossible room inside, walking back out, doing the circle around, coming back in, and then saying something along the lines of, "Whoa, it's bigger on the inside." And it just makes me ask, is Doctor Who ever gonna, like, end? Because the answer at time of recording seems to be a resounding no. They've got Disney money now. They've got Russell T Davies back. They announced that there's gonna be a Hooniverse. Do I like that portmanteau? Fuck no. Does this mean we're gonna get more spin-off shows? Yes, probably. Do I want spin-off shows? Not if it means you're gonna do to Doctor Who what you did to Star Wars, the poor thing. Look at it. It's begging for death. Look, the persistent sad delusions of the wastrels running this industry necessitate that everything has to be Marvel now. I've come to expect this, I'm not surprised, just disappointed. But Doctor Who, as a concept, kind of has a built-in Marvelification mechanic. The Doctor can regenerate, so can the TARDIS. As long as you have those two elements in place, you can do Marvel better than Marvel does. Rather than following the utterly disconnected adventures of the various Avengers, you can follow the linear timeline of one particular Time Lord. You get all the advantages of Ship of Theseusing your way through an endless parade of different actors and creative teams, but with the illusion of one cohesive story. Shit, MCU wishes it could Hooniverse as hard as Who do. But can I ask, how has that gone for Who? We have had a grand total of 3 showrunners in this blessed modern era. Russell T Davies created the show that we all fell in love with, taking Doctor Who from a niche BBC oddity to a mainstream sensation. But instead of ending the show like any normal head writer who was finished telling the story he wanted to tell, well, can't do that. The option simply never occurred to us. The Doctor must keep regenerating, so some other captain has to keep the Ship of Theseusing. Now, to be fair, there was a notorious precedent for this, but in retrospect, I am simply baffled by the collective hubris, myself included. I really thought they could just pull another classic series, but hey, I was 14, what's their excuse? So Stephen Moffat took over, instantly revealing to the world that while he excels at writing delightfully scary self-contained episodes, he eats absolute shit at planning season-long arcs. And as if he read this very essay, he wrote an entire season teasing the possibility that, ooh, maybe the Doctor will actually die for real this time, and the show will end. The problem with season 6 of Doctor Who isn't even that we obviously know the Doctor will survive because we know the show's not ending. Moffat mostly does a good job of getting you invested in how exactly the Doctor will survive, what kind of clever tricks he'll pull to get out of the bind. Emphasis on mostly. The whole thing gets much too mind-fucky and up its own ass in my opinion, but it's still good, goofy fun. No, the problem with the "is the Doctor gonna die" plot is that he does it again! He does the exact same plot in season 7! Is the Doctor gonna go to Trenzalore and die there? Ooh, uh-oh, looks pretty likely, but nope, it's cool, he figured it out. And then guess what? We're pulling the same shit for the season 10 finale. Maybe this is where the Doctor falls. No, she's fine. To be clear, this two-parter at the end of season 10 is Moffat's crowning achievement, and by far the best iteration of the "is the Doctor gonna die" plot. In a vacuum, it's an absolutely gorgeous story, but in context, it is cheapened slightly by the audience's paratextual experience of the show, our knowledge of both Doctor Who's past and its future. So let's shake the Etch-a-Sketch once more. New Doctor, new showrunner, new creative team. Ring ring, who's that? It's beige calling. Say what you will about the Moffat era, but it was never boring. When it was bad, it was offensive. When the Chibnall era was bad, which was mostly, it was like staring at a blank wall. It was like watching paint curl or linoleum dry. It was a 9-to-5 office job where you're not allowed to decorate your dull, gray cubicle. I hated every goddamn minute of it, and statistically, you did too. If there was a silver lining to be had in the Chibnall era, it's that it forced us Whovians to look inward. What did we really like about modern Doctor Who? What drew us to it in the first place? Clearly, you can't plop the elements of the show, Blue Box, Immortal Time Traveler, Trusted Companions, etc., into the hands of just anybody and expect decent entertainment. Well, turns out the thing we liked about Doctor Who was simply Russell T Davies, and he's back now, and honestly, after watching these 4 specials, the intervening 14 years feel like a bit of an aberration, the longest burp in British history. It feels like Doctor Who again. Now, to be clear, Peter Capaldi is my favorite Doctor. The Moffat era always had plenty of moments that felt like Doctor Who to me. My point is that, contrary to what entertainment executives will tell you, we the audience don't fall in love with concepts or genres. We fall in love with characters, and characters are easiest to fall in love with when they come from a cohesive artistic vision. And part of having a cohesive artistic vision is having an ending. Avengers Endgame was a lot of things, maybe too many, but by far the best thing it was an ending. Captain America and Iron Man, both characters we'd followed from the very beginning of the MCU, got satisfying and cathartic conclusions to their stories. But then, the MCU just kinda kept trundling forward. The ending cannot ever be the end when there is money to be made. The MCU is a zombie factory now, an endless automated assemblage of meat grinders, churning out bad CGI and lazy writing. The flashes of brilliance the machine would occasionally hork up in the old days have become exponentially fewer and farther between. I enjoyed The Church on Ruby Road quite a bit. I had a great time. I chuckled at all the jokes and I went, "Aw," at all the sad parts. But because my mind was fraught with all these aforementioned fears for the future, I found I couldn't get invested in the mysteries it was setting up for future episodes. Who are Ruby's bio parents? Well, by the time the next showrunner takes over, it will not matter. Who's this mysterious old lady who knows about TARDISes and can break the fourth wall? I'm sure the Doctor will figure it out, but then he'll probably just move forward into the ever-expanding future. His story will continue, and continue, and continue, creeping in this petty pace from day to day, full of sound and fury, signifying absolutely everything, until the tale is passed off once more to some other tired captain. It'll trundle forward and slowly lose momentum, its vice grip on the culture slowly slipping, until it eventually peters out with a whimper the way the classic series did. And when that happens, it will be because Doctor Who is more valuable to the powers that be as a cash cow than as a good story. Or maybe not. You know, maybe someday we'll get a kick-ass finale to Doctor Who that goes out with a fucking bang. Maybe Uncle Rusty learned his lesson about handing over his baby to some other mother clucker, and will decide to slam dunk Doctor Who into the pits of oblivion with panache and style. That thought makes me happy. I don't think it's gonna happen, but hey, you know, it puts a cheeky little grin on my face.